So day 3, another 7:30 in the morning start for us because we wanted to try and do over 20 miles today. We really need to get a bit of a wriggle on. It's a long journey that we're on. We were heading for the unofficial moorings at Woodford near Denton. I particularly wanted to try these out because I really wanted to see what it was like mooring to a riverbank rather than a pontoon. However, between us and the moorings lay these new guillotine locks for us to tackle, and we'd have to figure out how those worked first. Just before we got to the first lock of the day, we passed through this flood defences. Now it's like a little drawbridge. If the hooter sounds, the big steel cables pull a door up and hopefully stop the downstream areas from flooding. The upstream set of gates on a guillotine lock are just like any other lock, conventional. They're normally hydraulically operated with a normal lock key. The downstream gate, however, is this very large, flat guillotine that drops down. Now, as you approach the lock, this door will always be open if nobody's using the lock, and you leave it open when you exit. That means that coming downstream, it's actually quite convenient because as soon as you lift the lock and exit, you can just carry on your journey. As this was the first one of these locks we tackled, Susie and I went round and figured it out together. This was also an electric one. There are some that are manual further down the Nene. One thing I did notice was just how quickly the lock filled up with water when you open the top paddles. And this is something we'd have to be very careful about when we were coming back up the Nene later on. So with the first lock of the day negotiated, we could continue on our journey. Soon we found ourselves leaving the moorings behind and heading out into beautiful tree-lined countryside. On the canals we're used to doing about 2.5 miles an hour. While the speed limit is 4, let's be honest, when you try and speed up, mostly you ground out. However, the rivers are much deeper, and here the speed limit of 7 miles per hour is more easily attained without actually creating any wash at all. That said, there was the occasional shallow patch where we had to slow, and of course there were some areas where there were just quite a lot of boaters around, so again in those areas we slowed down too. As you approach most of the locks on the Nene, you will find that there are weirs close by. This is a large one on the left hand side. You do have to be quite careful because they do exert quite a lot of pull on the boat as you move round. Here we were just approaching Billing Lock, which is right by the Billing Aquadrome, which is a kind of a water park and caravan park. I think they do boat racing here as well. empty the lock, the guillotine is lifted by about a foot and it stays there for about 2 minutes. The water rushes out at quite a rate, and we found it easier to hold the boat on a line while it did this. The next few miles and lots passed by without incident. We did meet a boater at Cragganhoe Lock doing a U-turn, having lost that all-important key, but more of them later. We stopped at White Mills Marina and bought a past Friends of the Nene and pressed on. That boater I mentioned earlier, the one that lost the keys, well, we caught up with them again at Wollaston Lock number 12. Amazingly, we learnt that they'd left Wilton Marina about an hour after we had done, and that was 3 days ago. Even more amazing, they'd never owned a boat before. This was their very first journey. Mohawk, crewed by Cat and Andy, had done so well. I was very impressed. We stopped for lunch at Wellingborough and were instantly set on by a gang of rather rough looking swans. As we're being taken downstream on the current, things like bridges come up very fast. This first one wasn't too bad because it was quite straight, but this second one was at a crazy angle to the stream, and I'm afraid if you look at the underside you can see that it bears the scars of people who weren't quite as lucky as we were. I really thought things were going well by the time we reached Lock 17. We'd done about 15.5 miles-ish, we were through 12 locks, everything was going really well. It's at times like this you can start losing concentration, and that was about to happen to us. I manoeuvred the boat into the lock as normal, and we were joined by the other boat that was waiting. I was chatting away to the skipper about what the options for an overnight stop were and how far things were away, while Susie finished tidying up the gates. Our usual routine is to coordinate everything from the skipper. So Susie walks forward and checks to see if everything is good to go, and I must admit I didn't look very carefully and I just said yes. So Susie started to open the gate. Initially everything seemed to be fine, the boat was lowering nicely, although I did notice the lock was noisier than several that we've been in. Increasingly over the coming seconds, the water flow seemed to be increasing somewhere and the rudder started to get heavy. It was at this point I think all three of us realised something wasn't quite right. Those of us on the tiller were using a lot of throttle to try and keep the boat back from the front gate. The water noise was becoming deafening, the rudder was really heavy now, and the water was very turbulent. It was at this point we realised one of the paddles on the upper gate had been left open. With great presence of mind, Susie hit the emergency stop button and ran round and closed the paddle. Unscathed, both boats left the lock, and I was a little wiser. Around about 6 o'clock, we finally arrived at our mooring site for the night. It had been a really good day in many ways, despite our scare. Next time, we team up with Mohawk to finish off going down the Nene and to cross the fens. Until then, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.